All right, let's get right into it. For what, over 100 years, our entire world has been running on AC, or alternating current. But today, we're going to talk about a huge, kind of under the radar shift, a high voltage ride down the highway to direct current. And this change, it could be the thing that defines the entire next chapter of the AI revolution. And let's be honest, that revolution feels completely unstoppable, right? I mean, just a few weeks ago, OpenAI dropped Sora, a text-to-video model that is so good, it just makes you feel like, wow, anything is possible. The speed of progress is just, it's mind-bending. But here is the big question, the one our source material really digs into. What if all this amazing progress is about to slam headfirst into a wall? And not a lack of computer chips, but a shortage of something way more basic. What if the real bottleneck holding back AI is just raw electricity? To really get a handle on this coming power crisis, we actually have to look backwards for a second. Because according to our source, the market has this really bad habit of underestimating AI. And we're seeing this weirdly familiar pattern of doubt play out for the second time in less than a year. So let's rewind the clock to early 2024. On the left here, you can see AI token usage, which is really just a fancy way of saying how much people are using these AI models. And it looked like it was totally flatlining. And on the right, headlines were screaming about a new dot-com bubble. This spooked giants like Microsoft and Amazon so much that they actually hit pause on building new data centers. They were worried they were getting way out ahead of the actual demand. But then, boom, just a few weeks later, some new AI models for making images and writing code were released, and demand didn't just pick back up, it went absolutely vertical. The big players were caught totally flat-footed by this tidal wave they just did not see coming. And we're not talking about a little blip here. OpenAI's own CEO, Sam Altman, called it biblical demand. It was just a classic case of everyone staring at a temporary little dip in the chart and completely missing the massive wave that was about to crash over them. So, why does all that history matter? Because look at this. On the left, AI token usage is flattening out, again, and on the right, a brand new survey from Bank of America shows that the #1 fear for investors is, you guessed it, an AI equity bubble. I mean, it is the exact same setup. So, the whole point the author is making is this. The market is making the exact same mistake. Twice. Everyone's fixated on another little short-term lull, right at the moment the biggest demand wave we've ever seen, this one driven by video, is about to come roaring ashore. And this time, the problem isn't just about trying to build data centers fast enough. No, the problem has moved. The new bottleneck for AI isn't silicon chips anymore. It's the actual physical electrons you need to make them go. And hey, this isn't some fringe theory. The very people building this future are sounding the alarm. You've got Jensen Huang from NVIDIA and Greg Brockman from OpenAI, both saying the exact same thing. The game has changed. The main problem is shifting from chips to just plain energy. And this chart really just lays it all out. It shows what's being called the law of power. In just a couple of years, a single AI server rack, you can just picture a big cabinet stuffed with computers, has gone from using 10 kilowatts of power to 150. And with NVIDIA's next big thing, the Rubin platform, we're about to see a jump to over 400 kilowatts, on its way to a full megawatt. That's a 100-fold increase in power consumption in less than a decade. It's insane. So that creates a fundamental problem, a physics problem. To deliver 150 kilowatts of power with the old 48-volt standard, which is a type of direct current where electricity flows one way, you need over 3,000 amps of current. That is just an insane amount of electricity. It generates tons of heat, you lose tons of energy, it just doesn't work. The only way to move forward is to crank the voltage way, way up to 800 volts. That slashes the current you need and actually makes these superpower-hungry systems possible. And here is the real kicker. Upgrading used to be a simple rip-and-replace job, right? You just pull out the old 48-volt servers and slot in the new ones. But moving to 800 volts, that's not an upgrade. It's a total multi-year rebuild of the data center's entire electrical system from the ground up. So you have this massive, complex, really slow-moving problem on your hands. The grid is jammed, communities don't want new power plants, and you have to rebuild everything. This is precisely where our source introduces what they call an elegant solution, a company called Bloom Energy. So how does it work? Well, it boils down to 3 really clever things. First, Bloom's fuel cells make power right there on site, so they completely bypass the clogged up electrical grid. Second, and this is the genius part, they generate 800-volt DC power natively. That means they skip all the wasteful steps of converting AC power from the grid into the DC power that the chips actually need. And third, they're quiet and clean, so they don't get stuck in the years-long permitting hell that new gas or nuclear plants face. Okay, so we've got the tech solution. Now let's talk about the money. Let's see how this all feeds into the author's financial argument, because they believe it has absolutely dramatic implications for the company's value. So here's the before picture. This slide shows the author's old financial model for Bloom Energy, with a one-year target price of about $100. Now, this was their thinking before this whole video demand wave and the mandatory switch to 800-volt DC architecture really came into focus. But now you factor in this perfect storm, right? A massive new wave of AI demand, slamming into a huge power bottleneck that the author believes Bloom is uniquely built to solve. And they argue that the whole financial picture just gets torn up and completely redrawn. Their new one-year price target, based on this analysis, has literally doubled, jumping from $100 to over $200. And look, this isn't just a small tweak. It represents a total revaluation based on the belief that this power crisis is happening right now, and Bloom is positioned to be one of the biggest winners. And if you look out 5 years, the author's upside case is even more wild, jumping up to over $600. The core thesis here is that we are at the very, very beginning of a multi-year supercycle that's all being driven by AI's bottomless appetite for power, and it's going to fundamentally change the entire energy industry. So let's zoom all the way out for the big picture, the grand conclusion. The author argues that to really understand the scale of what is happening, we have to put it in a much bigger, much more historical context. You know, people who are worried about an AI bubble, they always point to the dot-com era, right? Back when telecom spending hit 1% of GDP. Well, today, AI investment is only at 0.6%. But the source argues the real comparison, the better one, is the British railroad boom way back in the 1840s. That peaked at an absolutely staggering 8% of GDP. That's more than 10 times what we're spending on AI today. This isn't a bubble. We're just getting started. And this is the central analogy that just pulls it all together. The railroads, they built the physical infrastructure that powered the entire industrial revolution. The author is convinced that AI is now building the cognitive infrastructure that's going to power the global economy for the 21st century. Which leaves us with this one last thought to chew on. If the AI revolution really is the next great industrial build-out, if it's on the same scale as the railroads, then does that mean raw electrical power is becoming the new steel? The single most important foundational commodity that this entire future is going to be built on top of?